That last sentence is one of the most powerful truths that can be communicated to a child. You matter to me. We can say it with our words, but we also say it, and we say it loudly with our presence. Being present and creating a peaceful home were the two concepts that were addressed in this video. And I mentioned that we might have to make both personal and professional sacrifices. Kathy, what are some of the personal sacrifices that you made to be more present as a mom?
Well, as a mom, there's a lot of sacrifices that we make. And, when your kids are young, you're sacrificing sleep, you're sacrificing showers, you're sacrificing your own plate of food. There's so many things that you sacrifice. And then the sacrifices become different. You kind of have to adjust to every stage. When the kids got into elementary age, I had to sacrifice nighttime TV, which had been a relaxing time when the kids were babies.
When the kids were little, you'd put them down, then you would just
That was a little zone out time for me. And but then when they got older and had homework, that sacred TV relax time became time that I should be spending with the kids. I wanted to be present at that table, whether or not they needed help, and I was available.
So they're doing
to
homework,
them.
you were sitting there with them as opposed to another room, watching
another
TV.
room, disengaged, not caring about what they're doing. That became important to me. So that was another sacrifice I made. I think also you and I both made the sacrifice of some social stuff. We weren't able to accept all the social invitations that we were given anymore. We had to say no thanks to a lot of things. We sacrificed some relational time with friends, but we gained it with our kids.
Yeah, those were always tough for me because being the extrovert, I always wanted to be out and about, and you really helped keep us grounded by saying, okay, we need to be at home for this one. And so those were sacrifices, absolutely. Yeah. I think for me, one of the game-changing moments for me to help me be a more present dad is when I made the decision to not use the phone in the car. Right. So I'd have the kids in the car, and I just decided one day I'm never going to talk on the phone when the kids are in the car. They were little at the time. Sometimes they didn't even want to talk to me, but to talk and laugh and sing. And I try to tell parents all the time, your kids are trapped. They're trapped in the car. Stay off the phone. Because if you're on the phone when they're little, what happens is you just create an environment as they get a little bit older, then they're going to be on the phone all the time. So that was just a sacrifice to be totally present. When you would call, I would answer the phone.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you
but
very
that
much.
was about really the only time. So definitely to be a present parent, you've got to make some sacrifices. And we encourage people to use the workbook to identify some of those areas. But let's transition to a peaceful home. How do you create an environment of a peaceful home?
You know what? That was really important to me also, the peaceful home. I wanted a comfortable home. I wanted our kids to feel welcome. I wanted their friends to feel welcome. I concentrated less on being super clean so that our kids didn't feel confined when they brought their friends or didn't feel like their friends were going to get in trouble or they were going to get in trouble.
Yeah, so it wasn't always clean, but it was always comfortable.
It was. And it was always welcome. The
Yeah.
kids were always welcome to have friends over.
Yeah, and parents, that's a big deal is having a house that your kids want to be at, because they're going to be somewhere on a Friday or Saturday night. Why not be at your house? And that was actually another sacrifice that we made, is we didn't move into a neighborhood that we necessarily love, but we found a house that we called it the party house. Yeah. We bought an extra refrigerator at a garage sale. We put it in the garage. We loaded up with bad hot dogs and hamburgers. We have a grill in the backyard, and we just sent the message, anytime you want to bring your friends over, hang out at our house.
Yeah. And it worked. I mean, kids have come back and said, this is a place I always liked hanging out at, besides our own kids.
Yeah, and it's fun even now that they're young adults, they still want to come back as well.
One of the other things that I was thinking is also when we get too busy, that contributes to not having a peaceful home. And one of the other things that we chose to do was let the kids just play in one sport or one activity a season. They could rotate, they could do whatever they wanted, but they kind of had to pick one at a time. Having 3 kids, that meant we had 3 activities still going on at any given time.
Well, and in some ways, if we're really honest, our kids had to sacrifice. They had to sacrifice to live under our values because they probably wanted to do more at different times. But in order to have a peaceful home, we couldn't have a busy home.
Yeah.
And we really had to work on that. You know, the other thing that I'm thinking about, you know, you've mentioned that we don't want to ever communicate to these folks that we've had it all together, we're perfect or anything like that. I know that I brought in some goofy parenting stuff from my family that contributed to a lack of peace in the home.
Well, you know, nobody's perfect, and that's kind of you to share. Why don't you tell us a little bit?
You know, my mom was passive aggressive, When my mom would be mad, she would just go really silent. Well, my mom wasn't evil. She just picked that up from her mom, who probably picked it up from her mom, who picked it up. You know, it was just passed on. And so when I come into our marriage and our family, I act the same way. I'm passive. I'm not yelling. I'm not screaming. But it's that quiet aggression. And you had to graciously and tenderly tell me I was being an idiot and create an environment of peace. But here's the thing about being an intentional parent. An intentional parent also is a transitional parent, meaning this, that I could be the transitional generation, so I don't have to pass on the sins of my past to my kids. And in all of this, you know what I learned is that you can't have a peaceful home until you have a peace-filled heart. Yeah. And I really needed to come to grips with what does it mean for me to have peace and to experience that peace so then I could model it and express it in our family.
Yeah, well, and you, by making that change, I mean, it proves that we're not perfect, but we can break that cycle sometimes of those unhealthy things. And that's the point. We're not perfect, but are we improving in our parenting?
That's good. Here's the deal. We've talked about presence and a peaceful home. Think about presence for a minute. You may be spending a lot of time around your kids, but not a lot of time with your kids. I recently read a study stating that the average parent spends a total of 7 minutes a day talking to their kids. That statistic grieves me. Now, I know that all of our lives are different, so we each have to make these unique sacrifices to be more present. And we're going to have to also identify the different barriers that are preventing our homes from being peaceful homes. You need to identify those barriers and then work through them. And that's why in the workbook, we give you some great ideas about how you might reorder some of your priorities, but we also want to help you identify the areas that are preventing your home from being the peaceful environment that you really want it to be. We know this stuff is difficult, but trust us, if we can do it, anyone can do it. So take it one step at a time, one day at a time, and soon you'll find yourself moving from a quick fix parent to a more intentional parent who values presence and a peaceful home.